Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Decoding the Unknown. I, as always, am your host Simon. Welcome. On this show, this is one of my writers, in this case Katie. Thank you, Katie. She's written me a script. These things were all over ancient Rome. The dodecahedron mystery. Oh, I know this one. I think I've made this has been an entry in one of my videos in the past, on side projects or something, and people think it's maybe for knitting or it's some toy, but no one knows what it is. Show it on screen right now. I'm looking at a picture of it in the notes, and this thing's pretty wild. The format of the show here, I've never read this before. Katie's written it for me. I'm going to read it. Let's jump in. Hello, Simon. How often do you think about the Roman Empire? Often. More often than I'd like. This was a meme a few months ago, right? Maybe when this script was written, because I'm so ridiculously behind in recording Decoding the Unknown scripts. But for me, the Roman Empire is going to come up at least once or twice a week for me in a video. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, Roman Empire. And I've done so many videos about it. I'm kind of sick of the Roman Empire, to be honest. But let's do another video on it. To be honest, it doesn't really matter what your answer is because A, I'm not actually interested. I was just trying to find a good way into this episode. And B, even if you do think about it, I bet you don't even think about what we're going to cover today. Or maybe you do, as it was you who added it to the list of topic suggestions for this channel. Anyway, today I'm enjoying not having to debunk anything remotely extraterrestrial, as we are talking about an intriguing little historical mystery. Let's get our thinking caps on and try to work out the real reason these small metal dodecahedrons were found all over the former Roman Empire. Max Hedron. If I manage to get another pun out of this, I'll be pretty impressed with myself, so let's see how it goes. Even though the Roman Empire ended many centuries ago, we're still digging up plenty of bits and bobs from this time period, with amateurs and professionals alike regularly finding bits of pottery, coin hoards, settlement remains, etc. This sounds awesome. How cool would it be to find a coin hoard? I get the feeling, in the UK, I think there's some rule. Let's ask ChatGPT. Yo, ChatGPT, what's up? So I'm thinking, if I'm in the UK, and I discover, I'm using my metal detector out in the field or whatever, and I dig down and I find some massive bastion of kilograms upon kilograms of gold Roman coins. What's the deal? Do I get to keep it? I'm not saying I found this. I just want to know, do I get to keep it? Because I think the government gets most of it, and I get a tiny percentage, right?
Hey there. Finding a massive stash of Roman gold coins would be quite the discovery. In the UK, there's something called the Treasure Act of 1996 that comes into play for finds like this. Essentially, if you find something that's considered treasure, you're legally required to report it to the local coroner within 14 days. For something to be considered treasure, it usually needs to be over 300 years old, made of gold or silver, or found with artifacts that are made of precious metals. Now, if your find is declared treasure, it's offered to museums to purchase at a market value determined by an independent committee. If a museum is interested and buys it, the reward is typically split between the finder and the landowner. So you wouldn't get to keep the coins outright, but you could get a significant reward for your discovery. If no museum wants to purchase the treasure, it might be returned to you.
Okay, I was wrong. That's pretty cool. Maybe we should all become treasure hunters. Although it is ChatGPT, it could be wrong. I feel like there is some law where the government gets most of it. While all of these are quite commonplace and easy to identify, there has been one specific item that has popped up from Wales to Hungary, with currently more than 100 examples being unearthed from 1739 to as recently as June 2023. It's a metal dodecahedron, a 12-sided object, and nobody can work out what it was for. The plural, by the way, can either be dodecahedra or dodecahedrons. I think we're going to go for the S ending so as not to sound too posh about it. I know all you tabletop gaming nerds have just pricked up your ears. A 12-sided object, you say? Obviously, the Romans were into D&D, or insert whatever game is more popular now. Does Magic the Gathering use 12-sided dice? Kevin would know. Kevin's always banging on about... Kevin in his scripts, there's always if he's going to find a way to insert either wrestling, WWE, not World of Warcraft, what was it called? Magic the Gathering, or butchery into his scripts. It often comes up. I would ask that writer, Kevin, he knows. Don't worry, we'll go through the theories in a bit, but let's find out about the actual object itself first. These dodecahedra... Didn't we just say it was dodecahedrons? Didn't we? Oh, we used the fancy plural after all. It seemed more right in this sentence. The dodecahedra have been found in various sizes, ranging from about golf ball to tennis ball size, so none of them have been that large. I know tennis ball size is quite big for I don't suppose we know what it is, so I've got no point of reference, do I? So never mind. It's a size of a tennis ball. In an attempt to show the size of these things, the Portable Antiquities Scheme website helpfully says all are roughly the size of an adult human fist, which it should be noted can vary widely from 5 centimeters to 11 centimeters in diameter. So thanks for that. Yeah, that's not very helpful. Just be like, yeah, sometimes they're about this big. We can all understand centimeters or inches or tennis balls. Otherwise, I'm going to be all confused. Be like, is that a baby's fist or is that Shaq's fist? We need to know. Most have been made from a copper alloy or bronze, although there are some stone examples. While many have been damaged, there are several intact or almost intact dodecahedrons that are currently on display in various museums across Europe. They are all hollow and each object is made of 12 pentagonal faces and each face has a hole in the middle. These holes are all of varying diameters. Each side is flawlessly joined to the others and there is a small metal knob on either corner of the dodecahedron. On one complete example, there would be 20 balls. Some are plain, but others have been found that are more decorated with engraved rings around the holes, borders around the pentagonal faces, or other little markings along each edge. And look, if you're listening as a podcast, I do realize that this is quite a complex thing to imagine in your mind. So I'd recommend that you just open up your phone and, well, best of all, load the video version of this podcast, which is on YouTube, or just look up Roman dodecahedron and you'll get the idea rather than me trying to continue to explain this somewhat complex geometric shape. These are called Roman dodecahedrons as they date back to the times of the later Roman Empire, i.e. around AD 43 to 410. They are also referred to as Gallo-Roman dodecahedrons as the majority have been found in what were Gaul, Germania and Britannia, which are now areas of France, Switzerland, Belgium, Germany and Great Britain. A couple have also been found in Hungary, but the majority are concentrated in this area. They've also been found in a variety of situations. Some have been found in tombs, while others have been found with a load of coins, some of which were in public areas such as baths, theatres and temples. Others have been found in the remains of military camps. The most perplexing thing for historians and archaeologists, however, is that nobody has any clue what they're for. All I can think of at the moment is fidget spinners. It's just a toy. If someone from the future discovered fidget spinners and were like, whoa, what is this? What is this for? Was this some sort of sewing device? Was it a timing device? A measuring device? Wow! It's like, no, it's just a stupid thing that people like to play with in their hands. I get the feeling that this is what this is. Great Hadron Collider. Here is one of the most intriguing issues about these things. There's no mention that anyone has ever found about them in Roman history. No writings, no drawings, no larger versions, no record of them appears to exist, although we know that they date from the Roman Empire's time period. If they're undamaged or minorly damaged, they show no other signs of wear and tear. So what could they be for? The suggestions are many and varied, but there seems to be a sticking point to each of them, so let's see what the current ideas are. I apologize in advance for all future subheadings, but once I thought of one that rhymed with dodecahedron, I couldn't resist until they were all tortuously forced into the same pattern. Go get a weave on. Oh, God. I am very impressed. It took me a minute to get that. Go get a weave on, because it's going to be about maybe this device is used for weaving or something, but it rhymes with dodecahedron, it's impressive that you made that rhyme, Katie, I have to say. This is one of the internet's favorite theories. In this instance, people would use the bobbles on the dodecahedron to wrap yarn around, then hook it over or whatever to create little tubes of knitting that feed down into the hollow center of the thing. I've seen videos of people doing this, and while it does seem a bit cumbersome and unintuitive, you certainly can make fingers for a pair of gloves. The theory is that the different holes are for different size fingers, and because many of these things were found in less warm parts of the Roman Empire, it stands to reason that this could be what they're for. Sounds great. When watching a series of videos about this by the YouTube channel Make Craft Do, she uses a 3D printed version of a dodecahedron as a type of loom and points out that two of the largest holes are actually oval, meaning that when starting with the smallest hole at the top and rotating them clockwise, this would be the template for the different sizes of your fingers, ending with your larger thumb. Yeah, but then you'll just end up with a bunch of fingers. It's just the opposite of fingerless gloves, whatever that is. Just glove fingers, which is weird. Also, Make Craft Do. If I heard that name for a YouTube channel, I'd be like, oh, it's one of those crappy channels where they're pretending to craft stuff. But this actually sounds like a good one, which is nice. She successfully creates a whole 5-fingered glove using just yarn, her hands, and the dodecahedron, but can't work out how to cast the thing off and resorts to using a crochet hook. Still, it's quite impressive and proof that you can indeed make a knitted glove using one of these things. But just because you can, doesn't mean that that's what this thing is supposed to be for. And here are some reasons why. Number one, it's like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. It's time-consuming, fiddly, and kind of pointless when all you need to knit something is 2 sticks and some wool. This is a finely crafted piece of metalwork and just seems to be wasted on this type of activity. Number 2. While over 100 have been found, if it was something that people used to knit gloves on the regular, you'd think there'd be a lot more around. Just imagine how many of those tomato pin cushions can be found in craft boxes the world over. Number 3. The different sizes of holes are actually irrelevant in this case, as the wool is wrapped around the metal knobbles, which are all fixed and uniform distance apart. Therefore, all the fingers are going to be the same size, no matter which face you choose to knit from, which isn't brilliant when you're making a glove, because obviously your thumb looks a whole lot different to the baby finger, doesn't it? Number 4. None of the knobbles found on the excavated examples of the dodecahedrons had any sign of wear. If wool or other fibers were constantly being looped and pulled around it, there would probably be more signs of use. Maybe the ones we found weren't used very much. I know I've bought a ton of stuff that I thought would come in handy, and it's never seen the light of day. Yes, definitely. It's like, oh, I'm definitely going to use this. And then you buy it, and then you never use it again. Because the internet. The internet makes buying things so easy. Number 5. I buried the lead here, but there are no examples of knitting from the Roman era. Romans did not knit. Yes, they had weaving and used looms, but this was not knitting. No examples of knitted fabrics or garments have ever been found. Okay, they might not have lasted this long, but there are no other trappings of knitting either. Knitting with needles wasn't invented until at least 500 years after the end of the Roman Empire, so I think we can safely say that the dodecahedron was not created with the intention of using it to knit gloves. To me, knitting is like some sort of wizardry, because I'm like, wait, you just use those 2 sticks and you just take that one piece of rope and you turn it into like something new. That's amazing. I went home to the UK recently. I say home. It's like I've lived in the UK for a very long time. And now the place where I grew up is no longer where my parents live. I went to my parents' house, is what I should say. And I lost my hat. I'm bald, gotta carry a hat, it's winter. And my dad was like, oh, you can borrow this one. Well, that's a nice hat. And he's like, I made that. And I'm like, wait, you knit? And my dad's like, yeah, I knit. And I'm like, how did I not know that about you? Why do you knit? And he's like, oh, I learned how to do it during COVID. And I'm like, of course you did. My dad's so retired. He's actually knitting. Dodeca, have fun. So maybe it was some sort of die or related to a child's game or something. Dice had already been in existence for centuries, so I suppose that was a possibility. If this was where your mind went, however, you might have forgotten about the bobbles. Each corner of the dodecahedrons had a metal ball on it, which is hardly conclusive to rolling. Plus, each side had a different sized hole, meaning that the sides weren't equally weighted. I think we can conclude that this possibly makes it the worst potential die of all time. As for a child's toy, while so few have been found that it makes it unlikely to have been a plaything. Also, they were found in military camps, among other places, so unless little Julius was in the corner playing with one of those things while his father was out working out military strategies, I don't really know how they would have got there with this theory. Plus, it doesn't do anything on its own. If it was a game or part of a game, you would have needed other things to go with it, but nobody seems to have unearthed anything else that connects with the dodecahedra, so I think that's the end of this idea. Faux betahedron. Really stretching it now, Katie. Speaking of military things, some people have speculated that this was some sort of measuring device used to work out the distance or size of various objects relative to others, or as a surveying tool. It could have been used to measure trajectories on the battlefield. The knobs on the corners make it easy to grip or set in a position, and the different sized holes could act as an aid to compare or measure things. That's not a bad theory, I like that. Unfortunately, that's about as far as this theory goes. Okay, I was hoping for something a bit more to lock it down for me, rather than just like wild speculation. Quite apart from nobody really being able to work out how this would work in a useful way, these things were all different sizes, and none of them had any handy markings or symbols. A lack of standard size plus no helpful measurement indicators equals something that's unlikely to have been used as a strategic military tool, or in fact, any type of tool at all. Dodecoration. Could this thing be nothing more than a fancy ornament to show off at home? A little doodad that takes up space and gets dusty on your mantle. I vaguely remember from whatever video I made about this in the past that they thought that it could be this. That it was like just to show off. Like, it's a complicated thing to make with the technology at the time, and by owning one, it was like, oh, you own one of those. That's like, like a fancy Swiss watch or something that's been like carefully put together by a man in a room with one of those little zoomy eye things for a really long time. And then it's like, yeah, it's just owning it because it's like so much time went into it, and that makes it cool in itself, or desirable, or a status symbol, or whatever. Other theories along these lines include using them as a topper for ceremonial scepters, or using them on weapons. The very essence of the things kind of preclude these suggestions, though. For one, they are specially crafted, not just mass-produced pieces of crap that were found all over the place. I guess they could be stuck on the end of a stick to make it into a kind of a mace, but the dodecahedrons themselves are small and not very heavy, so it's doubtful that they'd make a particularly formidable weapon. The variety of size also means they weren't some standard ammo or anything. And why bother with the different sized holes if they're just going to end up getting pounded into oblivion? So, the decorative route might seem more likely. There was one found in a tomb with remnants of wax on it, leading to the belief that they may have been used as candle holders. This is one of those theories, like the knitting one. Yes, they may have been used to stick a candle in, but that probably wasn't the intended purpose. Why? Well, only one has been found with wax on it, making it more like an in-the-moment makeshift solution than the raison d'etre for these little metal mysteries. But maybe they were just ornamental. Although again, their prevalence in military camps kind of hints at some other use, and again, you'd expect to have found many more examples than 130 or so across Europe. They could be in military camps because the head of the military camp has taken his nice little decoration thing to put up in his little tent in wherever they're militarying. Mulberry seed run. If you go to the obvious website for this thing, which is romandecahedron.com, really? You'll find a hypothesis page with the title, The Roman Pentagon Dodecahedron, an astronomic measuring instrument for determining the optimal sowing date for winter grain by GMC Wagmans. This is a very long and boring page. Sorry, GMC, which boils down to the idea that if you put the dodecahedron on a flat plate at the peaks of spring and autumn and let the sun shine through it, you could work out when it would be best to sow your winter grain. So useful. Wow, that's pretty useful. But let's poke holes in it, shall we? Number 1. This theory is so complicated. It relies on measuring sunspots through the various holes, rotating them in a certain way and calculating the angles and whatnot to end up giving you a date range in which you sow your grain. How would this even work? Wouldn't it be the same every year? Farming had already been going fine up until now. It seems that humans had a grasp on it without using this complicated technique. Here's an example of one of the many steps needed to read this thing. Now turn the dodecahedron without lifting it up in such a way that the 4 remaining areas can be checked. Write down or remember how many of the 5 measuring points have light passed through, and check if there is a small spot of light present, and turn the dodecahedron round its imaginary axe that runs through the 2 largest openings and check the remaining 4 measuring points. The 2 areas with the largest openings are opposite each other, remain at the same place in each measuring point. In total, 15 measuring points should have been checked. I am so lost. This is so confusing, and I think no. This is way over-engineered. The solution is, I don't think the device is. This continues until you've checked 20 points. I don't think remembering things is a great way to conduct this research when all your future crops are at stake, but what do I know? Number 2, your average farm would not be able to make the calculations necessary in Wagman's hypothesis. He also assumes many things that make the practical application of his theory unlikely, such as a perfect measuring body, when these things were made by hand, so could never be 100% perfect. He also says almost every dodecahedron has the 2 largest holes exactly opposite each other, which helped his theory that you would start with the sunlight shining through these 2 largest holes first. However, it's almost every dodecahedron, not every dodecahedron, so what would the others be for? Were they just assembled incorrectly? Number 3, he states that some examples he found had wear on the knobbles that would have been in contact with the ground. Okay, so what's the function of all the other knobbles then? If it was a tool that was supposed to be set down in a certain way, why not just have the knobbles on the side that were supposed to be facing a certain direction? Or why didn't they have equal signs of wear? Number 4. The found examples of dodecahedrons were usually small, just a few inches across for the larger ones. This does not seem conducive to producing any meaningful readings. Also, why weren't more found in a way that would tie them to agricultural or astronomical use? Sorry, but this theory seems like a load of chaff. Completely agree. I think it's not used for this. This is way too complicated. Dodecahedron. This is one of the stronger, or at least widely held theories out there, that the Romans, and especially the Gallic Romans, i.e. people living in the Gaul area of mainland Europe, had all kinds of religious and ritual practice. The most recent example of these dodecahedrons was found by the Norton Disney Historical and Archaeological Group in June 2023. I'd never heard of Norton Disney. What a great name. It's a small village in Lincolnshire, England, and it's named after the anglicised version of the French name de Isigny. Wow, okay. I guess Disney is a name. There was a dude, Walt Disney. But I would be like, if I called it the Norton Disney History of Archaeology Group, I just feel I'm going to get sued by Disney, even though my name is Disney. Disney, famously litigious. Apparently in a charter of 1386, the lords of the manor had an estate called Disneyland. Although I did look any further than the Wikipedia page for this one, and can't guarantee that that's true. That's incredible. And yes, Walt Disney is probably descended from this line, but the main point is that Norton Disney greatly precedes Walt Disney. Anyway, the example found by the volunteer archaeologists is intact, and is the 33rd one found in Roman Britain. It's 75% copper, 7% tin, and 18% lead, and was found specifically buried with other contemporary objects, such as some Roman pottery. I feel like, speaking of like the Disney name, there must be people called Disney today, right? If you met someone called Disney, I feel like it'd be like, you must be rich. You must be very, very rich. But maybe it's like, oh no, that was my like third cousin once removed, and I'm their grandson. I'm just a regular poor ass Disney. I mean, that's disappointing. The group says on their website, a huge amount of time, energy, and skill was taken to create our dodecahedron, so it was not used for mundane purposes, especially when alternative materials are available that would achieve the same purpose. The most likely use, we think, is for ritual and religious purposes. Roman society was full of superstition, something experienced on a daily basis. A potential link with local religious practice is our current working theory. More investigation is required, though. But why would this particular artifact be linked to rituals or stuff like that in the first place? Maybe it's the shape of the dodecahedron that holds the answer. It has 12 sides, which corresponds to the 12 signs of the zodiac, and even though Christianity was the official religion in later years, the Romans were big into astrology, and a link between this kind of thing and the metal dodecahedrons doesn't seem to be too far-fetched, especially when compared to the other theories we've covered. Yeah, I mean, when you don't know what something is, you can always fall back on the, it's like a tchotchke religious thing. According to Plato, the universe is shaped like a dodecahedron, and people seem to keep coming back to this theory even recently, judging from the results I found online. So maybe these little shapes had some kind of cosmic significance as charms or amulets, even if they didn't have an actual practical purpose. Expanding this a little further, many of these dodecahedrons were found in the area of Gaul, which was home to Celtic people. The curator of the Gallo-Roman Museum in Belgium said in an interview with Live Science, "We rather think it has something to do with non-official activities like sorcery, fortune-telling, and so on." How exciting. An article on artnews.com goes on to say, quote, "Its magical purpose could be explained by a variety of factors. First, dodecahedrons were mostly found in the Gallo-Roman Empire, an offshoot of the Roman Empire in which magic rituals were known to have taken place. The lack of written records about dodecahedrons may point to a need to use these objects in secret, as divination and magic rituals were punished severely in the Roman Empire. Dodecahedrons have often been found near burial sites where these rituals may have taken place. How, or even if, these things were actually used in any rituals has yet to be discovered. A dodecahedron found in Geneva in 1982 appeared to have the names of all of the 12 signs of the zodiac inscribed on it, which would catapult this theory to the top of the list. However, I can't find any more information than just the bald fact. I couldn't even find a photo or anything. Maybe the inscriptions were added later. It would seem that if this were the reason for these dodecahedrons, more of them would have some sort of symbol or marking on each face." Yeah, agreed, but also, we don't know. It's very ambiguous when it gets into this like religious stuff. Don't make a weird one. Sometimes the simplest answer is the correct one. So here's another strongish theory. These dodecahedrons were proof of the skill of the craftsman. Yes, that's the one I remember from before. Maybe there was a metalsmith standard where you had to produce one of these to get a certain level of recognition, or maybe they did it for the lols and they were just a good example of tricky pieces. That would answer the question of why all the holes were different sizes. It might have been to add that extra layer of technical difficulty. Maybe making them smaller was harder than making them much bigger. That seems probable. There has been an example of 20-sided object being found, but I believe there was only one of these uncovered so far. This also has multiple holes in each face and a knobble on each corner. It's also decorated a bit more than the dodecahedron, so maybe whoever made this one was the ultimate polyhedron master. Dodec-ancillaries. There have been a myriad of other theories about what these things were for, but most of them seem to fall apart when you think that only 100 or so have ever been found. Another idea I saw was that they were somehow used to detect counterfeit coins. But as usual, this makes no sense, as these dodecahedrons were all different sizes and the holes were pretty small, probably too small to be used to measure most coins. And if you had put a coin into one of the holes, it would be extremely annoying to shake it out again. I still think this is a Roman fidget spinner. Like a fancy fidget spinner for rich people. So there we go, plenty of these things have been unearthed, but not nearly enough to make them a common object. There is no mention of them in anything we've read about Roman life, and they don't appear in images from the time, but they have been definitively dated to the Roman Empire time period. They are only found in the more northern areas of the empire, not in areas such as Italy, Spain, or northern Africa. There have actually been a couple found in Southeast Asia that were made of gold, but these were thought to have been brought to Asia rather than made there. That even speaks more to my theory of like their fancy toys for rich people, because then they would make them out of gold if they were sending them as some sort of diplomatic present to the Far East, right? Really, the best theories for what these things were for are the ones that can't definitively be poo-pooed, as there are none that we can point to with certainty and say, yes, that's it, we've done it, well done, everybody. Who knows? Maybe many generations in the future, people will be puzzling over Bluetooth headsets or Crocs or those cushions where one side is sequins and the other is Nicolas Cage's face. That exists. I want it. It's good that we don't understand everything. It makes the past more fun, and any layperson's opinion on this is just as likely to be correct as anything else. Yeah, I personally think my opinion's correct. It's a toy. It's a fidget spinner for the Romans. Personally, I think I'm in the Metalworks Flex camp, and maybe most of these little creations weren't supposed to have any other use than just being a cool thing to look at, and many ended up being used as paperweights, for example. Maybe they were all created by the same person, which is why so few have been found. Whatever your opinion, you're probably nearer to the mark than the crop timing guy. He's just dodeca-wrong. Yeah, I think that's right. I think they're just they're like art or toys. They don't mean anything. And that's where we end today's pretty short episode. Thanks for being here. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.